Okay, students. So let's start today with AS level physics, May June 2025. Paper 2, variant 4 or variant 3. Both of the variants were same. So let's start with that. May June 2025, AS physics, paper 2, variant 3 and 4, because both of them were the same. So initially, you have some data points. We are going to ignore them. You have some of your data points here, some formulas here. Let them be. Let's start with question number one. Define the moment of a force. Okay, what is moment of a force? Moment of a force is the product of force and moment of a force क्या होता है बेटा product of force and perpendicular distance. Perpendicular distance between force and pivot. Force and pivot. Simple as that, nothing complicated. A trapdoor has a hinge at end A. ठीक है एक trapdoor का hinge है at end A as shown in figure 1.1. Okay. The trapdoor has a length of 80 centimeter and a weight of 75 Newton. The mass of the trapdoor is uniformly distributed along its length. Okay. A force F act at right angles to the trapdoor at end B so that the trapdoor is held in equilibrium. If the trapdoor is held in equilibrium, what does this mean? This means basically two things. Anti-clockwise moment is equals to clockwise moments and resultant force will also be equal to 0. Perfect. At an angle of 42 degree to the horizontal. Okay, 42 degree to the horizontal. State the principle of moments. You have to state the principle of moments. What will you say? You will say for an object to be in equilibrium, to be in equilibrium, for an object to be in equilibrium, the sum of anti-clockwise moments must be equal to the sum of clockwise moments. The sum of anti-clockwise moments must be equal to the sum of clockwise moments. Simple, easy peasy, nothing complicated here. Let's further move ahead. Calculate the component of weight that is perpendicular to the trapdoor. बेटा ये देखो weight act कर रहा है यहाँ पे. This is basic resolving forces on an incline. Now, if the weight is acting here, it will have two components. One that is perpendicular to the trapdoor, like this. What will be the other component? The other component will be parallel to the trapdoor, like this. Sir, can you calculate both the components? Always remember the component parallel to the incline is weight or the force sine of incline का angle. हमेशा जो भी component, let me write it here, component parallel to incline, हमेशा जो भी component parallel to the incline होता है वो क्या होता है? Force या फिर weight sine of theta. What is theta? Theta is the angle with the incline. And हमेशा जो भी component perpendicular to the incline होता है, that is weight cosine 72. So you can write here component perpendicular to incline. Component perpendicular to incline will be what? W cosine theta. Theta being the angle of the incline. Okay, so you have to calculate the component of weight that is perpendicular to the trapdoor. How will you calculate that? 75 cosine 42. Can any genius in the chat tell me the answer? 75 cosine 42 को कैलकुलेटर में डालो. Your answer comes out to be 56 Newton. Now you have to determine the magnitude of force F. आपने force F का magnitude निकालना है. This. How will you do that? Very easy. Let's take moments about point A. Let's take moments about point A. Let's write it here. Taking moments about A. If you take moments about point A, what will happen? First of all, beta ये realize करो कि the force that is parallel to the incline, ये 75 sine 42 वाली force will generate a moment of 0. Why? Because this is passing through the pivot. जो भी force pivot के through pass कर रही होती, it will generate a moment of 0. Okay. Then you have this force F. This force F is generating a what? This force F is generating a clockwise moment. Can you calculate this clockwise moment? Yes, F into 80 centimeter. Okay. Beta, this 75 cosine 45 is generating an anti-clockwise moment. Can you calculate this anti-clockwise moment? Yes, sir. 75 cosine 42. What is this distance? ये वाला distance क्या होगा, sir? The distance between the force and the pivot. What will this distance be? For this, you have to read the question carefully again. The mass of the trapdoor is uniformly distributed along its length. मतलब mass exactly middle में act कर रहा है. That means if the total length is 80 centimeter, the distance from where the weight applies to the pivot is 40 centimeter. The anti-clockwise moment will turn out to be what? 75 cosine 42 multiplied by what? Multiplied by 40. Simple. Let's equate both of these things, clockwise and anti-clockwise. Clockwise moments is equals to anti-clockwise moments. Clockwise क्या हो जाएंगे? F into 80. बेटा anti-clockwise moments क्या है? 75 cosine 42 into 40. Okay. 40 into 75 cosine 42. This becomes 1. This becomes 2. Force किसके equal आ जाएगी? 75 cosine 42 divided by 2. This comes out to be what? ये किसके equal आ जाएगी? This comes out to be 28 Newton as your answer. Simple. Let's further move ahead. आगे बढ़ते हैं. Let's further move ahead. Let's start with this question. An object of constant mass moves in a straight line. The variation with time t of the momentum of the object is shown in figure 2.1. ठीक है, momentum versus time graph given है. You have to define momentum. Momentum की definition क्या होती है? Product of mass and velocity is known as momentum. Calculate the change in momentum of the object from time t is equals to 0 till time t is equals to 12 seconds. आपने change in momentum निकालना है. How will you do that? Change in momentum is equals to final momentum minus initial momentum. बेटा final momentum क्या है? Final momentum क्या है? This value. What is this value? Let me zoom in a bit. हाँ जी. Final momentum is this value. What is this value? Negative 1.4. Initial momentum क्या है भाई? Initial momentum is this positive 2.8. Okay, so let's write it here. Final momentum negative 1.4 minus 2.8. What does your change in momentum comes out to be? Change in momentum किसके equal आ गया? Negative 4.2 kg ms minus 1. Simple, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now you have to calculate the resultant force. Resultant force is equals to change in momentum over change in time. Negative 4.2 डिवाइडेड बाय द चेंज इन टाइम. चेंज इन टाइम कितना है? कितने टाइम में फाइनल मोमेंटम से इनिशियल मोमेंटम से फाइनल मोमेंटम की तरफ जा रहे हो? 12 सेकेंड. You are taking 12 seconds to go from a momentum of 2.8 to negative 1.4. So divided by 12, what does your force comes out to be? हाँ जी, force किसके इक्वल आ जाती है? शहजादो. This comes out to be negative 0.35 Newton. Now, even if you write a negative sign, even if you don't write a negative sign in the answer of force, that's completely fine. You will get a mark either way. अगर आप यहाँ पे negative लिख भी देते हो तो भी आपको mark मिलेगा, ठीक है? क्योंकि negative sign सिर्फ direction represent कर रहा है. Okay. Describe the variation of the speed of the object from time t is equals to 0 till time t is equals to 8 seconds. अच्छा जी, आपने स्पीड ऑफ द ऑब्जेक्ट को डिफाइन करना है फ्रॉम टाइम टी इज इक्वल टू 0 टिल टाइम टी इज इक्वल टू 8 सेकेंड. ओके, कहाँ से कहाँ तक? फ्रॉम हेयर टिल here you have to define the speed of the object. How will we do that? Just focus on the board. Beta, can you realize in this highlighted region momentum is decreasing? आपका मास जो है वो कांस्टेंट है. here it is given. For momentum to decrease, if mass is constant, what can decrease? Velocity will decrease. So from 0 to 8 second, ये बात तो confirm है कि if momentum is decreasing and mass is constant, the only variable that can decrease is velocity. From 0 to 8 second, velocity is decreasing. Simple as that. Next up, can you also realize that the gradient of momentum time is equals to the resultant force? This gradient is constant. That means the resultant force is constant. अगर रिजल्टेंट फोर्स कांस्टेंट है बेटा, इसका मतलब क्या? देखो, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल मैंने क्या किया है, मुझे पता है ग्रेडियंट ऑफ मोमेंटम टाइम ग्राफ इज इक्वल टू रिजल्टेंट फोर्स. द ग्रेडियंट इज कांस्टेंट. दैट मींस रिजल्टेंट फोर्स इज कांस्टेंट. if resultant force is constant, resultant force is equals to ma. बेटा अगर रिजल्टेंट फोर्स कांस्टेंट है, दैट मींस एक्सेलरेशन आपकी कांस्टेंट होगी या डीसेलरेशन आपकी कांस्टेंट होगी. सो यू कैन से द वेलोसिटी इज डिक्रीजिंग यूनिफॉर्मली और यू कैन से कॉन्स्टेंटली. कॉन्स्टेंटली का हमें कैसे पता चला? because the gradient of momentum time graph is equals to the resultant force. Since the gradient is constant, resultant force will be constant. अगर resultant force constant है, acceleration constant हो जाएगी. So you will say the velocity is decreasing uniformly. Let's write it down. You will say the velocity. Let me choose a good color. This color is very ajeeb. Velocity, this looks fine. Velocity is decreasing uniformly. Simple. Nothing complicated here. By reference to figure 2.1, explain why the resultant force acting on the object during the first 8 seconds of its motion cannot be due to air resistance. अभी बात की. Can you realize during the first 8 seconds the resultant force is constant? This cannot be air resistance. Why? Because air resistance is directly proportional to velocity. वेलोसिटी कम होती तो एयर रेजिस्टेंस कम होती. बट ऐसा तो नहीं हो रहा. योर रिजल्टेंट फोर्स इज रिमेनिंग कांस्टेंट. हेंस दिस कैन नॉट बी योर रिजल्टेंट फोर्स. ठीक है. व्हाट विल यू राइट? यू विल से द रिजल्टेंट फोर्स, द रिजल्टेंट फोर्स, or you can say it like this: the resultant force cannot be due to air resistance, cannot be due to air resistance because air resistance decreases with speed. Air resistance decreases as speed decreases. Okay. However, the resultant force is remaining constant instead of decreasing, remaining constant instead of decreasing. Simple, easy peasy, nothing complicated here. Let's further move ahead. Okay, let's further move ahead. At time t is equals to 0, the displacement of the object is 0. Okay. On figure 2.2, sketch the variation of displacement with time from time t is equals to 0 till time t is equals to 12 seconds. अच्छा जी आपने डिस्प्लेसमेंट टाइम ग्राफ बनाना है फ्रॉम टाइम टी इज इक्वल टू 0 टिल टाइम टी इज इक्वल टू 12 seconds. First of all, remind me of one thing, or let's recall one thing. Gradient of displacement time graph is equals to velocity. Please, 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 for the love of God, remember this. अब हम एक काम करते हैं. Let's do one thing. Let's break this momentum time graph into two separate parts. ये जो येलो हाईलाइटेड है और ये जो ब्लू हाईलाइटेड. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल इस येलो हाईलाइटेड पार्ट को देखते हैं. लेट्स लेबल दिस पार्ट एज let's label this part as time t is equals to 0 say 8 seconds. If you realize time t is equals to 0 say 8 seconds ना आपकी velocity is decreasing. Okay, but the velocity is positive. बेटा velocity decrease तो कर रही है but positive है. Okay, so let's take this information towards the downside and let's see what we can do with this. Okay, okay, bring it here. Okay. From time t is equals to 0 till 8 seconds, your velocity is decreasing. That means your gradient is decreasing. That means your gradient is decreasing. Whenever your gradient is decreasing and is positive, जब भी आपका gradient decrease कर रहा होता है and positive होता है, which type of a graph do you draw? Gradient for 0 to 8 seconds is positive but decreasing. You draw a decreasing curve like this. Now, one thing that I want to teach you guys, one thing. Let me draw this. Okay, decreasing curve. Okay, one thing that I want to teach you guys is about the types of gradients. Please, please, please open up your registers, start copying what I am telling you. This will help you throughout your life. Write down the heading types of gradients. Okay, there are 7 types of gradients that you need to know in AS level physics. If your gradient is 0, you will draw a horizontal line. बेटा अगर आपका gradient 0 है, you will draw a horizontal line. If your gradient is positive and constant, which type of a line you will draw? Upward sloping line. If your gradient is negative and constant, which type of a line will you draw? Downward sloping line. Always remember, if your gradient is constant, you draw lines. Fourthly, if your gradient is positive and increasing, you will draw an increasing curve like this. If your gradient is positive and decreasing, you will draw a decreasing curve like this. This is the scenario which we just drew here. Gradient positive था but decreasing था, हमने decreasing curve बना दी. For the sixth scenario, if the gradient is negative and increasing, if the gradient is negative and increasing, which type of a graph will you draw? Somewhat like this. The 7 type of gradient that you need to know. If the gradient is negative and decreasing, किस तरह का ग्राफ बनेगा? हाँ जी जीनियसेस, अगर ग्रेडियंट आपका नेगेटिव है और डिक्रीज कर रहा है, you will draw somewhat like this. ठीक है? So this is how you know the types of gradient. किस तरह की आपने लाइन बनानी है. प्लीज 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 ये याद कर लेना. This will come in very very handy in the examination. Okay. From time t is equals to 0 to 8 seconds, आपकी velocity decrease कर रही है. That means gradient is positive and decreasing. Okay. Now let's look at time t is equals to 8 till 12 seconds. 8 से 12 seconds पे देखते हैं. From 8 to 12 seconds, what is happening? Your velocity is increasing, but in the negative direction. Okay, let's take this information to the downside. Let's take this information to the downside. Somewhere here. हाँ जी. From time t is equals to 8 till 12 seconds क्या हो रहा है? आपका velocity negative है और increase कर रही है. That means your gradient will be negative and increasing. Which type of a graph can I draw? This one. Graph number 6. I can draw graph number 6, or you can say I can draw line number 6 for 8 to 12 seconds. Let's draw it. Okay. The graph is done. Now, one thing that you have to realize with all your might, with all your brain cells. बेटा क्या आप रियलाइज कर सकते हो कि पॉजिटिव डायरेक्शन में जो डिस्प्लेसमेंट है वो ज्यादा है कंपेयर टू द डिस्प्लेसमेंट इन द नेगेटिव डायरेक्शन. The displacement in the positive direction is much greater compared to the displacement in the negative direction. Why, sir? The answer is pretty simple. Because the object is traveling for 8 seconds in the positive direction and just for 4 seconds in the negative direction. बेटा आप सिर्फ 4 सेकंड्स के लिए नेगेटिव डायरेक्शन की डिस्प्लेसमेंट कर रहे हो, 8 सेकंड्स के लिए पॉजिटिव डायरेक्शन की डिस्प्लेसमेंट कर रहे हो. सो ऑब्वियसली your displacement in the positive direction will be much greater compared to the displacement in the negative direction. That's why I have drawn the graph like shown in the ये जो मैंने अभी बनाया है. That's why I have drawn this graph like this. Why? Positive displacement क्यों ज़्यादा? Because positive displacement is having for 8 seconds. Negative is only happening for 4 seconds. That's why negative is less. Okay, let's move ahead. Acha ji, this looks like an interesting question. Let's see. The lower end of a vertical spring is fixed to a horizontal surface as shown in figure 3.1. Okay. You have a spring that is fixed to a horizontal surface. Perfect. The mass of the spring is negligible. A block of mass 5.5 kg drops vertically onto the spring and is brought to rest as the spring is compressed. ठीक हो गया. The block has a kinetic energy of 1110 joules as it makes contact with the spring. ठीक है. Block की kinetic energy क्या है? 1110 joules as it makes contacts with the spring. Okay. Calculate the speed of the block as it makes contact with the spring. Okay. Kinetic energy is equals to half mv square. Kinetic energy 1110 है. Half into mass क्या है बेटा? 5.5 into velocity का square. Can you calculate the answer? 1110 into 2, 5.5 taken under root of the answer. The velocity comes out to be 6.3. Velocity is 6.3 meters per second. Simple. Let's further move ahead. The gravitational potential energy of the block decreases by 20 joules as the spring is compressed to its maximum compression. Show that x naught is 0.37 meters. Okay जी, आपने शो करना है कि x naught is 0.37 meters. हो क्या रहा है? As the block is compressing the spring, the gravitational potential energy of the block decreases by 20 joules. So you will say change in gravitational potential energy is equals to mg change in height. Change in gravitational potential energy क्या है? 2. What is the mass of the block? हाँ जी, अभी देखा था 5.5. What is the gravitational field? Is 9.81. What is the change in height or x naught? Let's calculate that. 20 divided by 5.5. 9.81 is equals to your x naught. Simple as that. 20 divided by 5.5 into 9.81. Your x naught comes out to be 0.37. 37 meters is your x naught. Simple. Assume that, okay, we have to assume that as the spring compresses, all of the energy lost by the block is converted into elastic potential energy of the spring. Okay. एग्जामिनर ये कह रहा है एज द स्प्रिंग कंप्रेसेस ऑल द एनर्जी लॉस्ट बाय द ब्लॉक इज कन्वर्टेड इनटू इलास्टिक पोटेंशियल एनर्जी. Use data from A and B to determine the maximum elastic potential energy of the spring. Show your work. बेटा how will you determine maximum elastic potential energy? ये जो ब्लॉक है वो कौन सी टाइप्स ऑफ एनर्जीज लूज कर रहा है? ये जो ब्लॉक है वो कौन सी टाइप्स ऑफ एनर्जीज लूज कर रहा है? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल काइनेटिक. Second of all, it is also losing gravitational potential energy. What will be the maximum elastic potential energy? Maximum elastic potential energy is equal to the kinetic energy 1110 plus the gravitational potential energy 20. This comes out to be 130 joules. The variation of the force F acting on the spring with the compression X of the spring is shown in figure 3.2. Okay, force versus extension का graph given है. Use the information in B and your answer in C to show that the maximum force F naught exerted on the spring by the block is 700 Newton. बेटा अभी हमने निकाला है कि maximum elastic potential energy is what? 130 joules. And can you realize that the area under this graph, the area under this graph will be your elastic potential energy, 130 joules. So can you calculate the area here? Yes, 1 upon 2, F naught, X naught. What was your X naught? X naught क्या था बेटा? 0.37. Okay. 130 is equals to 1 upon 2 F naught into 0.37. Can you calculate F naught? Yes. 130 into 2.37. Your answer of F naught comes out to be 700 Newton. We have successfully proved that. Let's further move ahead. आगे बढ़ते हैं. Use the information in D to determine for the instance that the block is first brought to rest by the spring. The magnitude of. Okay. बेटा हमने information use करनी है in part D to determine for the instance that the block is first brought to rest by the spring, the magnitude of the resultant force on the block. हमने resultant force on the block निकालनी है. देखो let's say this is the block. It is compressing the spring. इसने स्प्रिंग को कंप्रेस किया हुआ. What will be the two forces acting on the block? First of all तो वेट होगा ब्लॉक का. सेकेंडली क्या होगा? एक कंप्रेशन की फोर्स लग रही होगी टुवर्ड्स द टॉप साइड. What will your resultant force be? बच्चों what will be the resultant force? Resultant force is the compression की force minus the weight. compression की force आपने निकाली थी F naught, yes 700 न्यूटन. सर वेट कैसे निकालेंगे? 5.5 that is the mass into 9.81. Can you calculate the resultant force, sir? Yes, resultant force किसके equal आ जाती है बेटा? Resultant force comes out to be 650 Newton. Simple. Now you have to calculate the acceleration of the block. अब acceleration of the block किस तरह निकालोगे? F is equals to ma. Resultant force क्या है? 650. बेटा mass क्या है? What is the mass here? 5.5. ठीक है, mass आ गया 5.5. Okay. How will you calculate the acceleration? 650 divided by 5.5 is equals to your acceleration. Can you calculate this answer? This answer comes out to be 118. Acceleration is equals to 118 ms minus 2. If you want to round it off till two significant figures, 120 ms minus 2. Simple. इससे ज़्यादा और क्या आसान करेगा एग्जामिनर तुम्हारे. Let's move ahead. A source oscillates with frequency f to produce a progressive wave of wavelength lambda. The source takes time t to produce n number of oscillations. Okay, the frequency is capital F. State what is meant by progressive wave. Progressive wave का क्या मतलब होता है? A wave that travels and transfers energy. A wave that travels and propagates energy. Propagates energy. Okay. State expression in terms of sum or all of frequency lambda and n for the distance traveled by the wavefront in time t. बेटा distance traveled by wavefront in time t कैसे निकालेंगे? You will take the wavelength, that is the distance traveled by one wave, you will multiply it with the number of waves, n lambda. वापस समझा देता हूँ. How did I calculated this distance? Wavelength lambda is the distance traveled by one wave. n क्या है? Number of waves. दोनों को multiply कर दो, you will get the distance. You have to calculate the time t to produce n number of oscillation. Time t निकालना है to produce n number of oscillations. How will you calculate time t? बेटा टाइम पीरियड का क्या फॉर्मूला होता है? 1/frequency. If you multiply this by n, you will get the time for n number of oscillations. ठीक है, I have multiplied time period by n to get the time for n number of oscillations. Determine an expression of speed for the wave in terms of f and lambda. Okay, speed is equals to distance over time. अच्छा जी, डिस्टेंस का क्या फॉर्मूला है? एन लैंडा. टाइम का क्या फॉर्मूला है? एन ओवर एफ लैंडा. लैंडा कैंसिल आउट. Oh, sorry, n cancel out. Frequency comes to the top side. Velocity v is equals to f lambda. This is your answer. Let's further move ahead. Two identical. Okay, so we have to read this question very, very carefully. I think there is a lot of information written here. Okay, two identical microwave sources x and y. Okay, emit waves in phase. Okay, the sources are separated by a distance of 30 centimeter as shown. Okay, x और y जो है वो 30 सेंटीमीटर से सेपरेटेड है. ठीक है. The intensity of microwaves is investigated at point P and at Q. Okay. Line PQ is parallel to line XY. Okay, that's pretty visible. Line distance XP is equals to the distance YP. अच्छा, तो ये कहा जा रहा है distance XP is equals to the distance YP. That basically means if this distance is X, this will also be X. If both the distances are same, इस पॉइंट पे क्या होगी? कंस्ट्रक्टिव इंटरफेरेंस. If both the distances are same, the path difference will become 0 lambda. Here you will have constructive interference. ठीक है, इसको erase कर देते हैं. Just leave this. Okay. What else is written? Distance YQ. अच्छा, distance YQ is 72 centimeter. Okay. And angle XYQ is 90 degree. The wavelength of microwave is 4 centimeter. ठीक हो गया. No problem in that. Calculate the frequency in gigahertz of the microwave. Very easy. Microwaves are electromagnetic waves. V is equals to f lambda. Velocity is 3 into 10 raised to the power of 8. Frequency हमें नहीं पता. Do we know the wavelength? Yes, 4 centimeter. Okay. 4 into 10 raised to the power of minus 2. Can you calculate the frequency? Yes. 3 into 10 raised to the power of 8 divided by 4 into 10 raised to the power of minus 2. Can you calculate the frequency in terms of gigahertz, beta? Frequency comes out to be 7.5 gigahertz. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, nothing complicated. इसको hertz का symbol जो है छोटा z. Show that the difference between the path lengths xq and yq is 6 centimeter. हमने show करना है कि the difference between the path lengths xq and yq is 6 centimeters. So first of all, you have to calculate xq. xq is the hypotenuse. How will you calculate hypotenuse? You will apply Pythagoras theorem. Hypotenuse का square is equals to 30 square plus 72 का square. Hypotenuse किसके equal आ जाएगा? हाँ जी. Let's calculate it. 30 square plus 72 square. Taken under root. This comes out to be 78 centimeters. The hypotenuse or distance xq comes out to be 78 centimeter. Let's write it here. xq is equals to 78 centimeter. Yq is equals to 72 centimeter. The difference between the path lengths, difference comes out to be 6 centimeters. Simple. State and explain what may be concluded about the intensity of the microphones at point Q. अच्छा जी, इंटेंसिटी ऑफ माइक्रोफोन्स के बारे में एट पॉइंट Q हम क्या कंक्लूड कर सकते हैं? Please focus on the board. Now, can you realize that the path length का difference is 6 centimeter? Yeah. What will be the path difference? What will be the path difference between x cube and y cube? Path difference किस तरह निकालते थे? आप difference in path lengths को लेते थे divided by the wavelength. Path difference comes out to be 3 over 2 lambda. Whenever your path difference is 3 over 2 lambda, you perform destructive interference. And if you perform destructive interference, your intensity will be minimum at point Q. बेटा मैंने कुछ आपको लैंडास लिखवाए थे, कुछ वेवलेंथ्स लिखवाई थी जहां पे डिस्ट्रक्टिव इंटरफेरेंस होती है. डू यू रिमेंबर? डिस्ट्रक्टिव इंटरफेरेंस happens at 1 over 2 lambda, 3 over 2 lambda, 5 over 2 lambda, so on and so forth. ठीक है. So please remember कि 3 over 2 lambda पे आपकी destructive interference हो रही है, hence your intensity will be minimum. Let's write this all in a paragraph format. First of all, you will say the part difference, the part difference, the part difference between the part difference between x and y at point Q is 6 centimeter divided by 4, that is equals to 3 over 2 lambda. This part difference corresponds to a phase difference of 540 degrees, leading to a destructive interference. Leading to destructive interference कह सकते हो. लास्ट स्टेटमेंट क्या आएगा? आपने ये बता दिया कि डिस्ट्रक्टिव इंटरफेरेंस होगी, उसके बाद लास्ट स्टेटमेंट बच्चे क्या आएगा? एक सेकंड, इसको डिस्ट्रक्टिव इंटरफेरेंस कर दें आप. ओके. Hence, hence, the intensity at Q is minimum. Okay, chalo, let's move ahead. A microwave detector is positioned at P and connected to a cathode ray oscilloscope CRO. The controls the CRO are adjusted so that the waveform is shown on the screen. Okay. Describe the changes to the amplitude of the waveform as the detector is moved from P to Q. अच्छा जी, आपने changes to the amplitude of the waveform बताना है as the detector is moved from P to Q. जैसे ही डिटेक्टर को हम P से Q पे ले जा रहे हैं, what are the changes to the waveform? बेटा P पे क्या हो रही है? Constructive interference. You have an intensity maximum. That means the amplitude here will be maximum as well. Q पे क्या हो रही है? Destructive interference. At Q, you will have an intensity minimum, hence an amplitude minimum. So you can say the amplitude goes from a maximum, the amplitude goes from a maximum at P to a minimum at Q. Simple. Let's further move ahead. State and explain the effect, if any, on the resistance of a filament wire in a lamp as the current in the wire decreases. जैसे ही current in the wire decrease होगा, the resistance in the filament lamp will decrease. Because the temperature decreases, the vibrations decrease, electrons around se pass over. Current versus voltage graph of a filament lamp, a decreasing curve like this on both sides. Like this. A battery of electromotive force E and negligible internal resistance is connected in parallel with two filament lamps A and B as shown in figure 5.2. The current in the battery is 3.3 ampere. The current in the lamp is 1.5 ampere. The power dissipated in lamp A is 18 volts. Okay. यहाँ पे 18 volts की power आ गई. Okay. Calculate the EMF of the battery. How will you do that? Very, very easy. The power of the lamp is 18. The current is 1.5. Can you calculate the voltage across the lamp? Yes. Let's do that. Let's do that in the given space. Power is equals to 18 volts. Current is equals to 1.5 ampere. Can you calculate the voltage across the lamp? Yes. P is equals to IB. Power divided by current is equals to your voltage. Voltage किसके equal आ जाएगा? 18 divided by 1.5. This comes out to be 12 volts. Okay. If the voltage across the lamp is 12 volts, the battery that is in parallel will also have an EMF of 12 volts. You can write here 12 volts. Simple. The filament wire of lamp B has a cross-sectional area of this. Okay. The number density of charge carriers is this, small n. Calculate the average drift velocity of free electrons of lamp B. अच्छा drift velocity निकालनी. Drift velocity or drift speed is equals to current divided by NAQ. Do you have the current in lamp B? Lamp B के अंदर current है? Yes. The total current is 3.3. 1.5 minus कर दोगे. What will be the current in B? 3.3 minus 1.5. This comes out to be 1.8 ampere. The current in B is 1.8 amperes. Okay. Write it here. What is the amount of charges? 3.4 into 10 raised to the power of 28. बेटा क्रॉस सेक्शनल एरिया क्या है? 1.4 into 10 raised to the power of minus 9. Charge Q क्या है? 1.6 10 raised to the power of minus 19. What does your drift velocity comes out to be? The drift velocity, in my opinion, comes out to be 0.24 ms minus 1. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, आगे बढ़ते हैं भी. Okay. A battery of electromotive force. I think I should shift it थोड़ा सा towards the right. हाँ जी. A battery of electromotive force 6 volts and negligible internal resistance is connected in series with a variable resistor and uniform resistance wire XY as shown in figure 6.1. Okay. The wire has a length of 2 meters and a resistance of 8 ohms. Okay. The resistance R of the variable resistor is adjusted so the potential difference across wire XY is 2.4. अच्छा जी वायर एक्स वाई के अक्रॉस आपकी वोल्टेज कितनी है 2.4 ठीक है डिटरमाइन रेजिस्टेंस आर वी हैव टू फाइंड दिस आर बेटा हाउ कैन वी फाइंड दिस रेजिस्टेंस आर we can apply the voltage divider rule. The voltage across xy is equals to what? The resistance of xy divided by the total resistance multiplied by the total voltage. What is the voltage across xy? 4.2. What is the resistance across xy? 8 ohms. Sorry, my bad. The resistance across xy or the resistance of the wire xy is 8 ohms. Total resistance क्या हो जाएगी? R plus 8. Total voltage क्या है बच्चे? 6. Can I calculate the answer? Yes. 8 into 6 divided by 2.4. R plus 8 is equals to 20. R is equals to 20 minus 8. R is equals to 12 ohms as your answer. Simple. Explain why the potential difference between any 2 points on the wire XY is proportional to the length between those 2 points. हमने बताना है why the potential difference is proportional to the length between the 2 points. यहाँ पे potential difference y is on this wire. Basically on this wire y is voltage directly proportional to the length. Very, very easy. We will say voltage is equal to IR since current is constant throughout the wire. Voltage becomes directly proportional to resistance. Then you will say resistance is equals to resistivity length over area. You will say since resistivity and resistivity and area are constant resistance will be directly proportional to length. We will say hence voltage becomes directly proportional to length. मैंने क्या किया बच्चों, वोल्टेज डायरेक्टली प्रोपोर्शनल थी रेजिस्टेंस के, रेजिस्टेंस डायरेक्टली प्रोपोर्शनल थी लेंथ थे, आई हैव जस्ट equated the first and the last variable. Voltage is directly proportional to length. Nothing complicated here. इससे आसान और क्या ही हो सकता है, हाँ जी। वेरी वेरी इजी, बहुत आसान सवाल था ये तो। चल आगे बढ़ते हैं। A cell of EMF E and negligible internal resistance R is connected to the circuit as shown in figure 6.2। ठीक है भाई, एक सेल है जिसकी EMF E है, negligible, oh sorry, internal resistance R है। Okay, the resistance R is unchanged। Okay, so the resistance R is unchanged. This was, I guess, 12 ohms. Okay. The movable connection P is positioned on wire XY so that the galvanometer reading is 0. The distance XP is 1.24 meters। अच्छा जी, बेटा galvanometer की reading 0 हो रही है when this distance XP is 1.24 meters। Perfect। बेटा ये पूरा वायर XP कितना वोल्टेज कंज्यूम कर रहा था? The pura wire, the entire wire of XP was consuming 1.5 volts. Oh, sorry, 2.4 volts. The 8, एक second, 2 meters, ठीक है। The 2 meters length of wire AB was consuming how many voltage? 2.4 volts। बेटा 1.24 meters कितना voltage consume करेंगे? X, what does X comes out to be? 1.24 into 2.4 divided by 2। What does this answer comes out to be? 1.24 into 2.4 divided by 2। The answer comes out to be 1.5 volts। आपकी EMF क्या आ गई सेल की? 1.5 वोल्ट। सर आपको कैसे पता? लेट मी एक्सप्लेन इट अगेन बिकॉज आई बेसिकली फंबल्ड व्हाइल सेइंग थिंग्स। तो बेसिकली ये जो पूरा वायर है एक्स वाई, उसके अक्रॉस कितना वोल्टेज है? 2.4। द लेंथ ऑफ द कंप्लीट वायर इज 2 मीटर्स। तो बेटा 1.24 मीटर वायर के अक्रॉस कितनी वोल्टेज होगी? 1.5 वोल्ट, सिंपल। और सर इसी पॉइंट पे why does it happen that on this point the galvanometer is reading 0? Because at this point the voltage from this wire 1.5 volts equals the voltage from this battery, both of them cancel out, the galvanometer gives a reading of 0। R is now decreased। अच्छा जी, ये जो 12 ओम का रेजिस्टर था उसकी रेजिस्टेंस वैल्यू अब हमने डिक्रीज कर दी है। ओके, state and explain the change that must be made to the position of P on wire XY so that the galvanometer reads 0 again। ओके बेटा, अगर आप वेरिएबल रेजिस्टेंस की रेजिस्टेंस को डिक्रीज करोगे, द वोल्टेज अक्रॉस द वेरिएबल रेजिस्टर विल डिक्रीज, द वोल्टेज अक्रॉस एक्स वाई विल इंक्रीज। देखो, अगर रेजिस्टेंस को आप डिक्रीज करोगे ऑफ द वेरिएबल रेजिस्टर, द वोल्टेज अक्रॉस द वेरिएबल रेजिस्टर विल डिक्रीज, द वोल्टेज अक्रॉस एक्स वाई विल इंक्रीज, ये चीज इंक्रीज हो जाएगी। So the voltage across 1.24 meter length will also increase। तो अब आपको अगर नल पॉइंट या जीरो डिफ्लेक्शन चाहिए तो आपने इस कॉन्टैक्ट को लेफ्ट साइड मूव करना होगा या टूवर्ड्स एक्स मूव करना होगा। हाउ विल यू राइट द आंसर? यू विल से as resistance of R decreases, as resistance of R decreases, the voltage across variable resistor decreases, variable resistor decreases, hence the voltage across wire XY increase to maintain क्या? To maintain zero reading on galvanometer, on galvanometer, move the slider towards left। Simple। Let's further move ahead, आगे बढ़ते हैं। Let's move ahead। State द नेम ऑफ टू डिफरेंट leptons, यहाँ पे आप बहुत सारी चीज लिख सकते हो, इलेक्ट्रॉन्स लिख सकते हो, यू कैन राइट पॉजिट्रॉन्स एज वेल, यू कैन राइट न्यूट्रिनोज एज वेल, यू कैन राइट एंटी न्यूट्रिनोज एज वेल. Which particles are hadrons, mesons, and neutrons? Okay. By reference to quark composition, show that the charge of a proton is this. प्रोटॉन की कॉर्क कॉम्पोजिशन क्या होती है? अप कॉर्क डाउन कॉर्क. द चार्ज ऑफ एन अप कॉर्क इज प्लस 2/3 E. द चार्ज ऑफ another up cork is plus 2/3 E. The charge of a down cork is -1/3 E. टोटल चार्ज क्या आ जाएगा? प्लस ई. ई की वैल्यू क्या है? 1.6 इंटू 10⁻⁻19 Coulomb. This marks the end of paper 2, variant 3 or 4 AS Physics, May June 2025.